good evening, and welcome to Silicon Valley Metaphysics. This is the show that explores processes and therapies of metaphysics in the Silicon Valley. Tonight, my guest is Dorthy Tyo, my good friend and mentor. She's also the director of the Palo Alto School of Hypnotherapy in Palo Alto. Hi, Dorthy.
Hi, Linda.
Thanks for coming.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
This is going to be great. I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
I do too.
Yeah.
Are you going to let me hypnotize you?
You know, I could do that, but that's just too easy.
Okay.
I think there's other things that people would want to know about.
I think that's probably true. Besides, if I hypnotized you, you'd close your eyes and then I'd take over the show. And
You
we don't want
would.
that.
You would. I know how you are.
I know.
So, what brought you to hypnotherapy?
That's a good question. I'd been interested in the mind-body connection for many, many years, long before I was in this field.
Mm-hmm.
And the other work that I was doing at the time, I was doing a lot of workshops, seminars, private counseling, intuitive counseling, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting a little bit bored with the same questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always wanted to know more about hypnosis, but I thought I'd have to go back to college, to get a degree. And when I started looking at that, there was nowhere to go.
Right.
There were no colleges. At that time, the only places where they were teaching hypnosis or certifying it was in dental school.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
No medical schools were providing it. And anyway, I thought, what can I do about this? And I always talk about one day across my desk came a flyer from the Palo Alto School of Hypnotherapy. And Josie Hadley, who was the director and founder, had sent out this flyer. I swear to you, I have no idea where that flyer came from. It didn't come in the mail. I don't know who put it there. I think she did, but I didn't know her then. Anyway, I read it and I called, and she said, I'm just starting a new class. Why don't you just come in and audit the first class and see what you think? And I did that, and I never left.
Wow.
I know.
So what were you doing before? Tell me. I have an inkling suspicion you were doing what I was doing.
That's true.
So psychic work.
I was.
Intuitive work.
Intuitive counseling, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And along with that, a business partner of mine, Barbara Courtney at that time, was and I were doing a lot of workshops and seminars around that subject as well,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of personal growth.
Right.
We used to do conferences down at Asilomar and other other venues, but in doing all of that and I loved it, it still became just a little bit too tight.
Yeah.
And so I decided I was going to expand, and
Right.
and I did. And I loved the process. I understood it. I guess I'd put it that way. I understood that when you're thinking a thought produces a physiological response.
Right.
I just didn't know what to do with it. So I just started taking classes, kept taking classes. Then Josie asked me to teach some of the classes, and that old thing about the rest, as they say, is history.
Right, is history. Well, it's funny because you and I were so similar in that way, where I was doing the same thing, even though I have my day job in the medical device industry.
Right.
I still was doing the medical intuitive thing and the angel therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on Bonnie Colleen's show.
Yes.
And a commercial came for the Palo Alto School of Hypnotherapy. And so I was, it was so funny because I went, you know what? That is really something I should check out. And I called and I talked to Pat, and she said the same thing, come and check out the class and whatever. And yeah, and now I'm getting my master's.
I know you are.
So it's amazing.
I'm so happy for you.
Maybe I'll take over the school.
You could.
Who knows?
We never know what the next corner will take us to.
But we don't want to go there, because that would be bad if I took over the school.
Why?
Because that would mean that...
I dropped dead?
Yeah. You weren't around, and that wouldn't be a good thing.
You know that I'm not going to leave until they carry me out? Is that it?
Yeah. I know that. So what do you think your school offers that other schools don't?
Well, quite frankly, I've never attended any of the other schools, so
That's true.
I'm not sure. However, I do know this, that people who go to other schools and then come to this one will say, well, we never got this kind of training.
Really?
Or we never found out. We didn't have any of this information. You know, I think for many years, ours was the only school teaching medical hypnotherapy.
Wow.
I don't know about some of the others now, but ours was more complete, had more information and more training. And I know that a couple of other places were doing weekend seminars and certifying people.
Oh, yeah.
No, those things, people walk away, they don't know anything.
And it's really, it's frightening, because they're walking away with a piece of paper after
It's true.
16 hours of training and feeling that they can go out and help people. And it is, you know, it's, in their minds, it's completely okay and it's completely harmless, but, you know, that's one of the things that gives us a bad rap.
Well, it gives us a bad rap. The other part is that many people will have that certification, and then they go out and they sit down with someone and they don't know what to do.
Right.
They have no clue what to do or even why they're doing it. So.
Where we just make it up.
Make it up as we go, that's right.
No, we're very creative.
We are.
And very helpful. And so what are some of, you don't just offer classes in hypnotherapy, what are some of the other programs you offer?
Well, we have several. By the way, our programs are also taught in Spanish and in Mandarin.
Yeah.
And we've got a new certification course coming up very soon in May, and that's on emotional freedom technique, or EFT.
Okay, yeah.
And I know that many people have heard of it, and we're offering a certification course for practitioners.
Now, you know, explain a little bit about EFT. You did that for me before I went to Hawaii.
That's true.
I wanted to go and swim in the ocean with the dolphins. And I had this thing, for some reason, I would get panicky whenever I would be about to jump in the water. And I thought, there's no way that I'm going to let this destroy my vacation and swimming with the dolphins. So we were doing a brief part of the class on EFT, and I asked Dorothy if she'd help me. And so, of course, I was her volunteer, because I'm going to be the first one to raise my hand whenever there's a volunteer.
That's
and
good.
It was fabulous. I was in there swimming with the dolphins the whole time.
And you were afraid you wouldn't be able to.
Right.
That's right.
So
I think that what I did with you actually was what I call mind-body energy balancing. And a friend of mine, Gary Craig, had taken that course called the Callahan Technique many, many years ago. And he escalated it, made it evolve into something that's even more practical and I think certainly more beneficial. And what EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, is simply a way to cause the emotions in our bodies to calm down. It's really based in acupuncture.
Right.
You know, the meridians on the body. And when we're doing something like that, things change dramatically. I've applied it in a couple of cases, and the responses are I have to say, miraculous. Even I'm stunned.
Yeah, but it goes down to even the cellular level and all the memory that's there.
Yeah.
I know. Cracked me up when you were having a bad day and you're sitting there. I thought I have to try that.
I use my own techniques.
Yeah, whatever works. That's
right.
fine.
That's right.
That's fine. So, what is your favorite area of hypnosis?
Good question. Good. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
I say that over and over again simply so that I can think about what to answer.
Exactly. I know.
I think that medical situations are for me the most, I won't say challenging, but interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with you there. Our last show we had Dave Wilson,
Yes.
who teaches at your school, who's a medical hypnotherapist, and he was going on about that. And you know, it's fascinating when you talk about how with the mind-body connection you can control the blood flow,
Yes.
you can control the pain.
That's right.
There's just tons of things that.
Well,
it's really, you're the one, you make your surgery what you want it to be.
That's absolutely right. In fact, I'm working with someone who's having surgery Thursday morning, and I'm preparing her ahead of time, and I will also be there. So the body's response to thought is phenomenal. And as you've heard me quote more than once, Aristotle's famous saying, a vivid imagination compels the body to obey it.
Yes.
For it is a natural principle of movement. All that means is that cellularly, we are responding to what we're thinking every minute of every day. Now, we know that's true for lots of reasons that I won't go into here, but, you know, think about a lemon.
Right.
And think about eating a lemon, and think about how that tastes in your mouth, and you start to salivate.
Yeah, you do.
Most people do. And that very fact says that when I'm thinking a thought, something is happening in here. So we have a memory, don't we, for tasting a lemon, and that memory causes the salivation. I wonder how many other thoughts we have and memories we have that cause other things to happen.
You know, it's funny because I can tell a couple things that I won't, but I know one memory. My mother used to love lobster Newburg, and I have never been one, even though I'm a Swede, I've never been one for this cream sauces, all that stuff. And we'd go out to eat, and the smell of that stuff. And I remember going out for breakfast, and somehow, this is so bizarre, we were in Lake Tahoe, and somehow the syrup mixed with my eggs and bacon, and that had that sweet smell, and it reminded me of that. And so every time I think of that, I just want to gag.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
Yeah. And imagine then, just with that piece, and viewers can also think about this on their own. How many times we have had an experience that caused us to have a response,
right?
And throughout life, we're still having that same response to something that happened 20 or 30 years ago.
Exactly.
Right. The other part is that when we know that the body is responding to what we're thinking, then we can wonder, can't we, or not wonder, but know that if we're thinking about healing, and if we're thinking about when we have surgery, keeping our blood in our body, and if we're thinking about our bodies healing very, very quickly, because our bodies know to do that, then we can anticipate pretty rationally,
right,
that something is going to happen.
Yeah.
So when we talk about hypnosis or imagery or going into that very relaxed state and having a new vision for ourselves, that new vision will be taken in by the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind will cause healing to happen, just like it causes salivation when we think about a lemon.
Right. You know, I have a friend at work who is fascinated by the thought of hypnosis. And, you know, we got on the topic of smoking the other day, and I said, yeah, I remember when I used to smoke, and I'm so glad I don't anymore. And she goes, well, how long's it been? I said, well, probably about 6 years. I said, when I finally cut it off. And she goes, well, I really wish my son would quit. And I said, yeah. I said, well, I use patches. Those were really, you know, they worked for me. But when I decide to do something, I just do it. And I said, have you ever tried hypnosis? And she got on the point of, you know, I'm fascinated with hypnosis, but I'm really afraid of somebody controlling my mind. And I told her, I pulled your pearls of wisdom, and I said, you go to sleep at night, don't you? And she said, yeah. I said, okay, and you're going down 280, and you're at Wolf Road, and suddenly you're at Saratoga, getting ready to make your turn home, and you don't remember getting there, but it's okay because you're there. I said, what do you think that is? She goes, but people aren't feeding things to me. I said, well, you're completely in control. You're completely awake. So maybe you can help dispel that. You put it much better than I do.
Well, I know one thing, that if we're open to suggestion, and we all are, because we're getting suggestions all day long.
Right.
From the outer world and from ourselves.
Yeah.
You know? And our bodies, Aristotle was right, you know? Our bodies are compelled to respond to this thought of the mind. And science is proving that to us now.
Right.
You know, modern science, with the instruments that we have today, can measure these things. Take a picture of a single cell. See what's happening to that single cell with our thoughts.
Right.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so all hypnosis is it's just a word, number one. I wish it were some other word, because people still, here we are in 2011, and there are still people who are thinking about it from the 1940s.
Right.
That mentality. All it is a state of mind, truly, state of mind and body and emotions, that is very like the dream state. And the dream state, then, if we're in that, we're being given new pictures that will empower us.
Right.
And I'm, as a hypnotherapist, I have no power over anyone.
Right.
None.
Right.
But it is about power, and it is about control. Your own.
Right. Yeah.
And all we do is empower you. All we do is empower the client in ways that they can't empower themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if it was such a crazy concept, the school wouldn't have been around since 1975.
Well, that's very
correct?
true. Well, the other part is, Linda, hypnosis itself was first used by surgeons.
Right.
The medical community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's funny how hospitals are opening up to the idea, but they're calling it imagery or relaxation therapy.
True. That's very true.
And you know what? Call it whatever you want, and that's perfectly okay, as long as it gets out there and it helps the people it needs to help.
A rose by any other name.
So yeah, it's just,
yes,
it's amazing how that works. But let them, if that's what they need to do, then that's okay.
Well, and you know what? Everyone's not ready to make the changes in here that need to be made so that new things can happen.
But they are coming around. They
More and
are
more people.
coming around.
That's true.
I saw it with the psychic stuff, and you know, a lot of people can do that in private. You know, it's their little closet activity.
Yes, that's very true, and people will even say that. Yeah.
I know it was for me for a long time.
Yeah.
But you know, I still see it coming to the mainstream. People are tired of the way things have been.
Yes, look at the Mideast.
And, you know, talking about the two people we were talking about before, earlier, that was amazing how two of them came in. They really, it was, you know, like, what are you guys doing here?
That's right.
They come into the class, and then the one who was the most dead set against
skeptic.
accepting anything and was so analytical.
That's right.
Was just amazed at the power she had.
That's right. That was the intuitive studies class.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I know. And so many times people don't have no clue, really, what their gifts are.
Exactly. And they don't realize that we're all born with this, and we all have this ability.
That's right.
It just gets strangled when we're younger. Like,
That's true.
You know, Don Miguel Ruiz says what is it? Not the Metodi, but the, I can't remember. Anyway, it's
Even
just,
though I can't remember.
I know, even though I can't remember. It's just that our parents, you know, and all our guardians, whatever, take that out of us by poo-pooing it when we come up with these things.
Absolutely. Or laugh.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I did your little experiment. We were having dinner the other night in this restaurant in La Honda. And, you know, people, they have a bar on one side, they have a restaurant on the other. And people let their kids run around, and there's toys on the floor, and the kids will play on the floor. No. No? Those are big kids, big drunk kids. But anyway, we're sitting there, we're having dinner, and we had Honeybee with us. I call that Gregory's son, Honeybee. And this little girl comes to the table. And I said, you know, I don't get this opportunity. I'm going to take this. And I asked her, I said, who were you before you were you? And
good question.
It was so funny because she wanted to say something so bad. And she goes, I was, she just couldn't articulate it.
How old was she?
She had to be, what, 4?
Yes.
Maybe? 4 or 5.
She was trying to say the name.
Yeah. It was amazing. And so Honey V asked me, he goes, what was she supposed to say? And I said, well, it's kind of an experiment because a lot of children remember where they were in a past life. And so you can, if you ask them, a lot of times they'll remember.
And start telling you a story. And their eyes sort of glaze over as they tell that story.
Yeah.
I know.
Because they totally remember that. And, you know, it was, I was just so happy to get the opportunity. Now I have to do that every time I see small children.
Well, if you have the opportunity, especially if it's a situation where the child, it's a totally unexpected question.
Right.
And a child will just sort of, all of a sudden, almost go into a trance state and start telling you.
That's the way she was.
She does.
She was just like, I was, and she was trying so hard. But she knew, and it was amazing.
I know. That's why I love doing that. You know, in the past life class that I do, I talk about that, and especially if you have small children, to ask that question.
Well, you know, that's one of my favorite therapies is the past life regression, because I find that it's just so, you can find out so much.
Oh.
I had one woman who came to me at one of the shows I was doing, and she had said, my husband and I just aren't getting along, and I just don't know what it is, et cetera, et cetera. And so I put her in to, the way I was doing past life regression at that time is I would get her into a relaxed state, and then I would go back, and I would see what was going on and tell her. And so
I did that too.
At the, afterwards, how it had turned out was I saw her and her husband in this, you know, they were in front of a fountain, and it was like in a Renaissance time, and they were just this young couple just staring into each other's eyes, very romantic, holding hands. They had this promise of life ahead of them. And then I see the next shot, they're in a cottage, and it was almost like, you know, the English countryside or something. And it was a nice cottage. It wasn't like they were poor or anything. And the husband was sitting there with a goblet of wine, and there were about 3 children around, and they were all well dressed, and she's down there scrubbing the floor. And so after the therapy, I said, your expectations weren't met in this marriage. That's what the problem is. And she thinks about it a minute, she goes, you're absolutely right. And so we started talking about other things. And that was very helpful for her.
I bet it was.
So, I love doing that stuff.
I think that a psychic reading, if it's done from the heart, is full of suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
And when you start to see something psychically, you can turn the phrase just enough so that it becomes a suggestion, because when that person's listening to you, they're in a trance state.
Right. Right.
And you can offer new pictures for them, and it begins to change how they're viewing themselves, begins to change their perception of themselves.
Right. Right. Yeah, it was, that was pretty amazing. But it's funny how I try to leave my clients with the tools, which, makes no repeat business. But that's okay. I mean, you and I both know it's
you
not...
empower them.
Right, exactly.
That's what
and
you
that's
do.
what I try to do, and that's my job.
That's your job.
And so that's what I love to do. And, I mean, we both know we're not in this for the money. We're doing it because we want to empower people, and we want to help them and have them lead better lives.
Exactly.
And if we have...
We're just doing our jobs.
Exactly. And we were chosen. That's why that memo came across your desk, and that's why
true.
that commercial came on. So, anyway, well, time has flown.
It has flown?
And we are
Is
finished.
it flown right out of time?
We're flown right out of time.
All right, then.
So I hope that you will come back and visit again. This has been fun.
Palo Alto School of Hypnotherapy.
All right. Go. You'll enjoy it. So thank you for watching, and we will see you again